Welcome to Smashing Through Walls with Carla McGee. Whether you are just pulling up a seat to the table, breaking a glass ceiling, or smashing through walls, grab your favorite mug and join us on the first and third Friday at 11 o'clock for candid conversations with industry experts and decision makers as we navigate and explore all the things related to real estate and community.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Smashing Through Walls with Carla McGee, where we don't just want to break the glass ceiling, we want to smash down the walls. Today, I'm super excited to have Demitri Downing with us, the founder of MITA. Is that how we say the acronym?
MITA.
Okay, I was saying MITA, and I'm like, is that right? Right? So he's the founder of MITA. And we'll go through what that means later. And he has brought some awesome guests with him. So I'm super excited for everyone to introduce themselves, and we'll go ahead and let that happen.
Yeah, sure. Demitri Downing, founder of MITA. I'm an ex-prosecutor, Arizona native, been in the industry, cannabis industry since 2012. Quite a journey with dispensaries, retail, all that. 2016, I founded MITA, because I recognize the need for education, not just of individuals, but industry professionals, for networking, for a community, which creates transparency, accountability, opportunities. So in 2016, we started MITA. It's evolved over the years. We can talk about that. And 2022, we've been through a lot. It's a big journey, but I did bring a couple of my favorite people here today. So it's Ari and Giulia. We'll let them introduce themselves.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Giulia Valluzzi, and I am a cannabis industry consultant. I specialize in operations, compliance, and licensing.
I'm Ari Muñoz. I've been in the industry for the last 5 to 6 years doing marketing, branding, hiring people for different companies, and now I'm here with MITA. I'm the Director of Special Projects and Head of Social Equity, so all the information regarding social equity.
I'm Audra Travis. I am a teammate of Carla with MHG Commercial.
You said smashing through walls, and the theme of the cannabis industry is breaking down barriers,
Exactly.
creating new realities. And these two women are doing just that. So I'm thrilled that they're here with us.
Well, anytime we're trying to change the perception, right, of the norm in society, whether that's women coming into male-dominated workforces or trying to, change the outlook or the perception of marijuana, I think we're smashing through walls. I just was so excited to have you guys on here because I feel like we're all trying to accomplish the same things with that and just kind of changing what is the current reality and perception. So we met Demitri, Audra, not we, Carla, I wasn't there, through MITA. What does MITA stand for?
MITA stands for Marijuana Industry Trade Association. Some people say cannabis, we say marijuana.
Right.
We didn't want to combat the politically correct battle as well as the ending prohibition battle. So we go straight after those who don't understand that marijuana, cannabis is a therapeutical remedy. It's an herbal remedy, and prohibition is not the model for management in any way. So we just called it marijuana because I found real quickly, 2012, 13, 14, 15, when I started this journey, that if you said cannabis, you lost your audience.
Okay.
And they're like, what is cannabis? They're like, oh, why are you trying to change the word marijuana into cannabis? Okay, so I'm not going to fight that battle. I'm going to fight the legalization battle.
And the legalization, for those that are listening that don't know, the legalization was last year, right? 2021, January. Arizona, voted on Prop 207. Demitri, weren't you involved in the writing of that proposition, or how involved were you in that prop?
Yeah, just real quick, brief overview.
Sure.
Marijuana has been illegal 70s, 80s, 90s, etc. They invented this concept called medical marijuana, and I was prosecuting at the time. I found it quite fascinating. 2010, it was drafted in 2009, passed in November 2010. January 2011, they started the process of creating a system in Arizona to implement the initiative that was passed by the voters. Remember, this isn't a legislative process, it's an initiative process, which creates incredible, unique distinctions. So January 2011, they started the process. They finally finished it in May of 2012. Licenses were issued on August 8th, 2012. At that point, we had medicinal marijuana. Colorado switched over from medicinal to adult use. Washington switched over to medicinal adult use. We kind of saw it coming. We drafted an initiative for the 2016 ballot. That initiative was drafted in 2015, 2016. Arizona voted down by like a few thousand votes. And then we came back to the ballot in in November 2020 for implementation in January 2021, but that was drafted in 2019. Again, the entire time I was trying to convince the legislators, Republicans and Democrats, to legalize, and now they're stuck with a whole set of problems because they didn't do it themselves. We can talk about that theme if you want to. But so now, January 2021, adult use has happened. We have adult use, we have medicinal use, and here we are today.
So that is a fascinating question. Why do you think that there's a plethora of problems right now? Because in the legislation, is that with Prop 207 or?
No, well, I mean, we're still changing liquor laws 100 years after Prohibition ended. So marijuana law will always evolve. Always evolve. There will always be subtle changes. As a matter of fact, the entire industry structure probably should be turned on its head. I said it publicly. Somebody's going to call me out on that. That's fine.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is, I'm a free market economist. I'm a libertarian. I'm an Arizonan. I'm an American. And I believe in free enterprise. And that's not what we have. So we can have that whole debate and discussion any day, anytime, anywhere. I'd like to hear people justify limited licensing, restricted licensing, specialized licensing. But that's a big aspect of what we have in Arizona here today. So regardless of what you believe or what you have, everything needs adjustment. And when something goes through the initiative process in Arizona, it becomes subject to something called the Voter Protection Act, VPA. So it becomes VPA legislation. And VPA legislation cannot be changed in any manner whatsoever, any detail, any I, any T, without 75% vote of both the House and the Senate, approval of the governor, of course, and subject to approval of the court. So nobody wants to touch it. Because it's almost impossible to meet those thresholds down there at the Capitol. So even if you need a dot and I across the T, it's really difficult. So in 10 years of medical marijuana, we had one change, and I helped guide that through. 2 changes, and then now we have the adult use. But we're not going to have any changes for 10 years because it's just so difficult to do things out of the legislature. So the wise things to do is to have things done through a majority vote and not subject to the court approval, but the court review, and do things through the legislative process. But that's not what happened in marijuana. I educated individual. We hoped that Doug Ducey would see the trend. He didn't. 60% of Arizonans decided in 2020 to go ahead and legalize cannabis. He was wrong. A lot of people were wrong. And here we are today. And Arizona, unfortunately, needs to be a state that's governed properly and wisely. And the wisest way is to not let things go through the voter initiative process. But sometimes people have to speak, and their will was spoken, and now it's written almost in stone. You're more likely to change the King James Bible than you are the cannabis policy in Arizona.
Would that be, unless it becomes a federal regulation, then would that change what Arizona's policy looks like?
You could write dissertations on all these themes. So I'm trying to simplify these giant, and I'm always looking to Giulia, because Giulia is the only person to say, Demitri, you're just wrong. Okay?
Well,
it's okay, Giulia. You can tell him.
It's just, the licensing in Arizona is very restrictive. I mean, there's only, 138 licensed operators. That's 138 retail locations for a state that has the population of about 7 million people. You take a look at New Mexico right next door. They have a population of 2 million, and they have open licensing. The RLD just opened up licensing to, micro businesses, micro retailers.
What's RLD?
Licensing and development.
Okay.
It's like a rules licensing and development. Okay, I'll have to.
It's fine.
Yes,
but that's their regulation.
Right,
okay.
Right. And so they have going on over 300 dispensaries right now for a state that has a population of 2 million. Albuquerque alone has more dispensaries than the entire state of Arizona. So it's kind of like, is that, there's got to be a middle ground somewhere.
So for us laymen's, does what that mean is in Arizona, you have to have a license that in our state that it was pulled in a lottery format. That's it, right? Those are the licenses, and those licenses get traded. And you're saying in New Mexico, it was like, as long as you meet permitting and zoning and you have the capital, you can create that as a business. Like that's the difference. Okay.
Yes. And it used to be that it was restrictive licensing to, in the medical program, you had to apply for a license and it was restricted. And then when their legislation went through for adult use, they decided to open that up and allow for basically anyone who wants to run a cannabis business, go in and apply for a license, pay a fee, and the fees are very reasonable. You can be a micro cultivator, a delivery, I think, retailer, manufacturer, whatever you want.
Yeah, and it's great that Giulia deals with reality. I deal with what is possible.
Right.
Okay.
Which big picture.
We have, and you asked about federal legalization, But it's very important for your business people out there, your real estate people out there to remember no market structure is sacred. Okay. So I existed before there was a market structure for cannabis. Before the market structure for cannabis was cartels, college kids growing in their dorms, somebody growing in grandma's greenhouse. That was the market structure. That was what we had prior to the end of prohibition and the creation of a medical marijuana market structure. The only reason we have a medical marijuana market structure in Arizona is because some people in DC needed to put it into their initiative so they could legalize cannabis, marijuana. That's all they wanted to do. So if we legalize marijuana, we have to create a supply chain. We have to create a market structure. So what should we do? Well, let's do limited dispensaries because that will eliminate the perception that there might be a marijuana store on every corner, and that will help us politically. And let's just throw in limited manufacturing cultivation in there. What the hell?
Right.
What kind of reality is that?
Right. What kind of free market is that?
Free market, or just how many?
Well,
how many industries in the entire state have a limited number of licenses, or restrictive licensing, or merit-based licensing, or specialized licensing for cultivation and manufacturing? It doesn't make any economic sense, but yet it was woven into the initiative. And now people coming into the industry think, oh, that's how the industry works. But that's not how the industry has to work. And that's very important for your businessmen, your entrepreneurs, your legislators, your politicians out there to reflect. It's the people's industry. It's not an industry that necessarily belongs to us. It just so happens to be structured this way.
Yeah, it's like you have 138 operators that are controlling everything, in the industry, and only they can sell the product. And so, sometimes you'll go to dispensaries and there'll be long lines, which, people are waiting hours. It shouldn't be that way. There should, it should be available, to
Imagine
everyone.
if we only had 138 bars or
Yeah.
138 liquor stores, right? That's the equivalent. Like if you're trying to relate it to the two, to me, that's what it would be like. Imagine if there was only 138 bars in our state where you could go drink wine or go have a microbrew or something like that. That would be insane. And that's what we're talking about.
And
Right.
that's also a good thing to bring up with Ari, for example. She came to MITA. She's been in the industry for 5 years since she graduated high school. She's been working in different aspects of the industry. She understands the cannabis consumer, cannabis patients, responsible cannabis use, all that stuff. So she came to MITA a year ago, hoping as a social equity applicant to win a license. She didn't win a license, but she's a classic example of somebody she's 23 years old. She has big dreams, big ambitions, big skills, big knowledge, a woman who wants to grow in the cannabis industry, but she can't because of restrictive licensing here in Arizona. And it's a nice paradigm improvement from the paradigm of prohibition, but too many individuals are resting comfortably in the paradigm of limited licensing. We need to open it up so more individuals like her can do what?
To start brands, to start our own dispensaries, medical facilities, honestly, just get out there into the world. They do make it a little harder, and it's basically like a cash cow. So if you don't have a whole bunch of cash, you really can't get into the business right now, unfortunately.
There's just a huge disparity, it seems to me,
Yeah.
Right.
between what's available and who's allowed.
And
to-
who's
to-
controlling the licensing?
mhm.
There's, 138 operators that are controlling all the licensing at all levels.
Well, and I think when they did the social equity piece of it, it seemed it seemed good, right? It has the good buzzwords and it seemed warm and fuzzy and like we're trying to be equal for all. But
But the cannabis industry is also very expensive to get into.
Right.
That's the other side of the coin. Yes, you can make a lot of money, but you can also lose a lot of money. It's not without risk. Just like anything in life, there is a certain amount of risk involved. And it's particularly difficult in cannabis because it's so heavily regulated and they're shifting regulations and many things that it's all new,
Right.
and new things like Delta 8, that was a big hot topic for a while. And it's just constantly changing. And you have to have really, good legal counsel, good accountants. You have the 280E problem, banking.
280E and what's Delta 8? There's two words you use that I don't know what those mean.
So Delta
More
8 is
dissertations.
a
For the
is a-
layman, for people
Yeah.
who just
No,
need a
she's-
basic understanding. I want to
yeah.
hear.
Well, it's a cannabinoid that can be synthetically produced through CBD. So it's less expensive way to create a THC high, but you're using a hemp. And it's a chemical process that converts it to Delta 8. And it still produces the same high that you would get with THC, but at a milder. I guess it affects everyone differently,
Right.
but it's in very low doses, so you can take a lot more, I guess, or drink. It's usually in beverages or gummies.
It would be like it wouldn't. To me, it seems like it would be more easily like controlled, like the percentage of like to like
low
track
dose.
it.
It's more
Yeah.
low dose. And what was happening is that in a lot of other states, because it's not regulated, it was considered hemp and it was, under 0.3% THC, they were selling them in gas stations. And, like the products were being sold, openly in a lot of different places that weren't regulated, like outside of a dispensary. And so some states decided to prohibit Delta 8 products altogether. Others want to regulate it. It has to come through a licensed dispensary. You have to purchase it through a licensed dispensary because then there's, testing that has to happen. But really, I'm similar to Demitri in the sense that if anything, I'm more of a libertarian, and I personally believe that it's up to the consumer to make their decisions about what products they want to use.
I'm glad we brought Ari today because, for last year, I've been trying to figure out how to help her get into the industry. And a lot of these people, I wouldn't say friends, acquaintances. I know I've been in this since the beginning. I know all the license holders. I know how it works. And it's very interesting. You see these different kind of businessmen. Some businessmen are just happy to be here. Some want to actively manipulate and control the supply chain so they can maintain a higher price so they can have more profits. That's not my kind of business, man. You know what I'm saying? If you want to do that, try speaking about that on a radio station. Try debating
Right.
me.
Make it
You know what I'm saying?
transparent.
But and I used to be the other way around. I thought, oh, but this is exciting. We can control the supply chain. We can pass a piece of legislation in 2016 that flips a switch, and then we control it for decades and decades. Hire the right lobbyists, convince the right legislators that this has to be restrictive licensing, so no one else can get in for the
Like
right reasons.
control it.
Yeah, spin them a
Right.
little bit, and then you got it. But that's just not right. And it took me like reflection to get to the point where I am today, and meeting hundreds and hundreds of people with like Ari and others with really good ideas, a lot of ambition and hopes and dreams, and all marketplaces. I mean, how many different industries, how many different markets have restrictive licensing? Sure, there's issues. If someone wants to enrich uranium, that probably has certain risks, and the government has a role in getting involved. I think maybe if somebody, that probably is likely. But what is it about cannabis is a non-threatening plant that can
Right.
be grown over here, and just as long as it's used responsibly and therapeutically, everything's fine.
Mhm.
So why the tremendous need for restrictive licensing? And that,
Control.
yeah, and as Julia said, there does need to be restrictions. Like, we can't have people selling it to high schools and stuff.
Right.
But a big philosophical concept that's gotten warped in the cannabis industry, state by state, is that we need barriers to remaining in, not barriers to getting in. If you start doing that, you're talking about Minority Report, Tom Cruise. Remember that movie where
Mhm.
they're judging people that they might be murderers in the future? So they're putting them in jail before they even commit the murder. You can't live in a society like that. And if you put together a society where you have restrictive licensing, barriers to entry rather than barriers to remaining in, the safe production and distribution of cannabis needs to happen. The safe production and distribution of maybe radio stations needs to happen. Although the free press gets a lot there's not a lot of licensing on the free press, but maybe, Trump would probably argue that there needs to be licensing on the free press, but that's okay. Another story. So, but if you start creating society where you create more and more barriers to entry, all you're doing is smashing and limiting the dreams of people like Ari.
Right. So Ari, what was your vision? Like what? So Demitri just said like your poor dreams have been smashed.
Oh, they're not smashed.
Right.
She's
Right. A little squashed for a moment. You're also 23, and we know, being gray hairs in the room, that you have a long time to also achieve your dreams. But tell us about what you've gone through recently.
I mean, more recently, especially with like the whole licensing stuff, I mean, to apply for the license was pretty expensive. It was $4,000 per application,
Non-refundable.
non-refundable, and there was 1,500 other people like myself who were trying to apply. People that were supposed to be coming from disproportionately affected areas, low poverty areas. So we kind of expected these people to have money in order to be able to apply. Thankfully, my family and everybody was able to come up with the money, so I was grateful enough to apply. But creating this idea of like limiting licensing and having people to come up with this money to create the social equity program and expect them to try to be able to compete with other people, I feel like was a little low. And I mean, if it was an opportunity that people could have gotten at any time, like if it was a free market and licensing was open to the public at all times, if that fee was the same fee, I mean, it would be understandable. But to make it like a kind of one-time allocation for people who are coming from a low poverty place, it was super difficult, especially for people like myself. I wasn't one of the people that was chosen, but I have backup plans, so I'm not giving up
What
yet.
are your backup plans? I want to hear some of these.
I'm in the middle of trying to create my own cannabis brand,
Okay.
a full line of products, flower, concentrates, cartridges. I want sun-grown products, super healthy.
What's sun-grown?
Sun-grown.
Sun-grown.
Sun-grown,
Thank you.
yeah.
It's
So
another dissertation.
It's the difference between having like an outside grow and having the sun actually perpetuate the plant versus using LED lighting or fake lighting in a warehouse
Which would-
like setting.
So
Exactly.
like what I
It's a-
think of is like hydroponics, right? That's
yeah,
done
exactly.
indoor.
That's
Okay.
all indoor. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
want to push the idea like you wouldn't grow your children under plants or under lights for 18 years. So why do that to your plants?
I like it.
Yeah. I've been trying to push that. So that's my main. Oh, sorry. That's my main plan, and that's what I'm trying to focus on, especially trying to help other people like myself, of the 1,300 people or 1,400 people that weren't able to get in the licensing pool. I'm trying to figure out some kind of initiatives that we can help people build brands.
Do we know how many people were in the social equity licensing pool?
1,506.
And so 1,506.
Well,
And how many were
technically
pulled?
they each did two. So there was 750 people
Yeah.
divided. Each person
Yeah.
was allowed to do two applications. So about 750 human beings. It's hard to tell because some did once and but two.
Right.
So somewhere between 750 human beings and 1,506 human beings applied, and 26 were pulled.
26.
Yeah.
26.
And out of those 26, probably the majority of them were partnered with large multi-state operators or interstate operators that already have
Yeah, but
10 dispensaries.
And we can have a debate about whether that's important because I don't
Right.
think that's important. I just call them investors, grandma, Illuminati, dispensaries, intelligent people with money who partnered with social equity people to give them the $4,000
Right.
so they could go forward.
And mostly it's just a lottery for the social equity people. They're not going to really operate these dispensaries. They just got their number drawn. They were selected, they were targeted by,
Right.
for their I guess their qualifications to be a social equity candidate.
Right. Which
and
would
which is
boils down to
basically
demographics.
yeah,
and-
like they
mhm.
don't have any money, they had some convictions, they
Right.
came from a poor zip code.
Right.
And now you can be a social equity candidate, but it's really you can win a lottery. You can win,
But a lottery that costs you $4,000. Correct?
Yeah, it could also be a lottery that costs you $4,000 or an opportunity to create generational wealth for the rest of your family
Right.
after for $4,000.
So, because I'm trying to understand, so it costs, say, $4,000 to even apply,
per application.
right? To even be chosen, that is non-refundable. And then that's not even the cost of building your business. That's not the cost of real estate, capital,
Attorneys,
attorneys,
employees.
accountants, employees.
Yeah.
All the things
Yeah.
that wrap your brain around creating a business.
So
that
that-
was just the ability. I'm just paying
Yeah.
$4,000 for the ability.
To win a license, and then you have to go out and find your financing, find your business partners, and that's why most of them partnered with a large operator
Which
because
makes sense.
right, they have the financing, and for the most part, these companies have they're like management companies, and they have all their systems in place, and they may give this social equity candidate an opportunity within the organization, or they may offer to just buy them out totally.
And
And for your listeners,
Yeah.
because your listeners are probably more interested in the bigger themes and how the cannabis industry
Right.
works. Stuff. This social equity little thing that we happened here for the last year is a
a blip. Yeah.
A blip. It's a moment in time. But the bigger picture, the bigger issue is how the cannabis industry should be structured in general, how the market structure. I was thinking we were talking about, she mentioned sun grown and stuff. I was thinking Giulia could do like an analysis on the spot right now as to what the cost per ounce is for sun grown versus LED versus incandescent.
yeah.
But the audience is probably not going to be interested in that.
right.
They're probably more interested in how the industry works and how it became what the industry is today.
Mhm.
And I would urge everyone to understand that there's nothing sacred about our industry structure, or any industry structure.
Our industry being Arizona specific.
Arizona's
correct? Yeah.
cannabis industry. I mean,
Yeah.
there's 37 medicinal states. There's more than a dozen adult use states. Federal legalization is coming, as you said. Every state structure is different. Some have vertical licensing. Some have horizontal licensing.
Some have plant counts, some have plant, canopy limits. Like
Yeah.
in Arizona, they have unlimited cultivation but restricted retail. In New Mexico, they had plant count restrictions and now unlimited retail.
Right.
So it's kind of like balancing that out, so the supply and the demand can kind of come together, and it can become a true free market system with competition.
Well, there's a lot of people that don't want it to become a free market system. But does New Mexico still have a plant count?
Yeah, they do. You pay per plant. They increased it temporarily because there were some concerns they wouldn't have supply for legalization. They just went legal April 1st. So it's now
literally
like adult use, right?
Oh, okay.
So they just went to adult use, and they did they sold quite a bit of product, and there's a lot of issues with supply there. There's worries that they'll run out of product on 420, which is a big cannabis holiday coming up next week.
Right, and this is how crazy it gets, because you're talking about federal legalization. We probably should talk about that because that's the next big unknown. But for example, in Arizona, we have unlimited plant count. So one enterprise can have
unlimited
50
for the
acres,
business, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Well, unlimited to sell within the state of Arizona.
Oh, okay.
Right now. So you can plant a big 11-acre grow down in Santa Cruz County, and you can get, you can sell the entire state. No one has actually done like 100-acre grow and just dropped the price of cannabis in Arizona. Somebody could, but nobody's done it because of the capital reasons.
I was going to say that probably because there's not 100 acres available.
But this is why businessmen, businesswomen, legislators, intelligent individuals, and citizens need to get actively involved and talk and think about our industry structure. Because when it does flip, we're like, for example, competitively at an advantage over New Mexico, because New Mexico doesn't have unlimited plant counts. We already do. They'll change it so they can start exporting, but we need to be ahead of the game. We need to see what's coming, know what's coming, so Arizona can be an export state for cannabis. It can be the 6C. What is that? Like 5 Cs or 4 Cs?
No, it's 5, I think. It's cotton and copper, and so cannabis should be one of them.
Candy,
Citrus.
cattle.
I don't know, because they learned that in elementary school, so they may not promote cannabis being one of them.
The 4 Cs?
So it's citrus, copper, cotton, and cattle.
And cannabis.
I
5 Cs.
Real quick, something that's been brought to my attention that maybe you guys could help me understand a little bit better, because I've only just learned about it, is that there's a caregiver, not licensed, but a way in which a caregiver can grow marijuana. And it's my understanding that each individual, each adult, gives up their rights to be able to. I'm a little bit confused. Can you help me finish that thought?
Let me make a joke. Why don't you guys take that one? Because I'm in enough trouble already.
In the medical program, in the beginning, they needed a way for patients to get their medicine. And so the caregiver program was established by the Department of Health, which allows an individual you can grow, as long as you're not within 25 miles of a licensed dispensary, you can cultivate up to 6 plants. I think 12 plants total, 6 mature. I'm not 100% on the numbers.
That seems like I seem to recall as well.
Yes.
Mhm.
And then as a caregiver, you can, for other patients, they can assign you their cultivation rights. And then the caregiver can grow up to a maximum, I believe, of 200 plants. And then a lot of those caregivers who are licensed, it's totally legal. They can grow their plants and provide them to their patients. And then they can also sell that material to licensed operators as well.
Oh.
So that is kind of like a micro, but it's still really difficult in Arizona because of zoning restrictions and
Let's talk about zoning restrictions.
Well, yeah, because it's no surprise Audra and I sell commercial real estate, right? That's what our job is. And we have sold cannabis-related real estate and have come across the zoning restrictions required to provide that. And it can be challenging, to say the least.
At best.
Yeah. And that's why I made the joke earlier with, you were saying if we could do 100 acres. I'm like, yeah, if you could find 100 acres. I mean, I don't think people look at Arizona and they see just, like vast land, right? But they don't realize how much of that is not for sale and how much of that is restricted due to zoning. Like you can't be, how many feet from a school, which is okay, but
it all depends on the jurisdiction. But
meaning the county
the
or
city or the county.
Okay.
And the
Each
state
county.
has a rule 500 feet, or the federal, there's a state rule as well. But let's start with big picture. Then maybe Giulia or and Ari can talk about the actual ramifications as to the real world and the world that we want to happen. But starting at the big picture level, it frustrates me when a commercial real estate agent comes to me and says, "Where are the opportunities in cannabis?" And I have to say, there are very few opportunities in cannabis because we have such a restrictive licensing structure. That annoys me because I believe in entrepreneurship. I believe in free enterprise. I believe in opportunity. So starting from the highest philosophical level, your listeners out there saying, where are my opportunities? Well, they're very few because there's only 26 more dispensaries coming, and there's only a few hundred cultivations and manufacturing centers being put up. Landowners should have the right to do what they want with their land, subject to certain restrictions, time, place, and manner, zoning at the local level. That's a society we live in. But these questions are being wrestled with very actively. Well, they really aren't wrestled with that much, except for in regards to the social equity licenses. People are deciding jurisdiction how to deal with those. But these questions are being asked and answered over the last 10 years in the cannabis industry in a way that they're usually not pulled out of thin air and asked and answered. I was actually in the council office in Tucson when we created the time, place, and manner for the dispensaries, cultivations, manufacturing. And I had my friends in the city government who were like trying to like understand how many plants should be allowed to be cultivated in the city of Tucson. I have no clue about the economics and market structures and the realities that existed or were in place or coming. It's just I have become the ultimate non-fan of the government after all this stuff. But for your listeners, this is an important topic.
I think too, a lot of cities and towns have intentionally prohibited, retail, cultivation, manufacturing in their cities.
It was written into the proposition, right? That any city could say, not in our backyard.
Correct.
Right?
So you have places like Chandler and Gilbert. Yes. Even Phoenix has restricted zoning for adult use only. They will allow dual, which is the existing operators who have both a medical and an adult use license. But these social equity licenses that are coming out are just adult use. They're not medical, which doesn't make sense to me, but that's just how the law was written. They can only sell adult use. When the program was founded as medicine, and they won't let them sell it as medicine, it just makes no sense. And that has caused problems because in all of these different cities and towns, they don't have zoning for adult use. And a lot of them are saying, we're not going to do zoning for adult use. We're only going to allow dual license operators, in our jurisdiction.
So where are they going to go?
Right, that's the $1 million question. Then they have to try to find a place that allows the zoning or get a variance, and then they have to pay attorneys, to help them with that, and engineers, and everything else that goes along with finding a location, paying for that property. Which a lot of times, once people find out that it's for cannabis, the price doubles or triples, and people are paying so much just because it's zoned properly. A building that might be worth, $2 or $3 million is selling for like $8 or $10 million because it's zoned for cannabis. And so that's it's tough. And as a cannabis operator, you can't write things off.
Well, and just for reference, I had a client he's in a 1031 exchange. So he was looking for an investment property here. And I came across a cannabis building, right, that's being sold. So not the business, that's still there. It's just the building itself. We call it like a triple net, but that's a whole nother topic for another day. And so I looked into it, and the building was $3 million. He had about $1.5 million to spend, so he would need lending. So I reached out to his lender. You see Audra not shaking her head.
Not going to happen.
Because not going to happen. The lender was like, we do not lend on cannabis-based businesses,
Absolutely
buildings.
not.
And so he would need $3 million cash in order to purchase that property. So if you are, say, a social equity person who had to scrimp together the $4,000 just for the license itself, how in the world are you going to have $3 million for a building structure and to then operate your business? Because you can't get lending. It has to be cash.
Well, you can get lending, but it's going to cost you like 18%.
That's insane. That's a credit card.
So, it's like no matter what, you're in a predatory situation.
Right.
And what do? You have to have a lot of money. It's like, how do you make a small fortune in the cannabis industry? Start with a larger one. I mean, it's not that easy.
Right. And where's the equity in that then? Right? Like, that's my question.
And it's time. You really have to look at your ROIs, your return on investment, and really do those numbers and understand what you're getting into, because you might be in over your head. And that's something true too. Like in New Mexico, I was commenting on how there's just so many different cultivations and retail locations that are popping up. Are these people going to actually succeed, or are they going to fail and lose everything, all their family's money? Like, only time will tell, but
Right.
that's free market.
Well, that would be no
know?
different than starting a restaurant, right? Like
Right.
50% of restaurants fail. And so it's like if as long as you have the capital, as long as you have your seed money, you can go make pizzas almost wherever you want, right? So it
Right.
would almost be like that type of structure,
Yes.
just with cannabis.
Yeah.
With our clients, I have jokingly called it the marijuana tax. It's amazing, as Julie was saying, how things, as soon as they find out that it's marijuana, then the
The
price
price.
just goes right through the ceiling, and there's not much you can do about it. It is what it is. And then once again, finding the correct zoning and whatnot, and trying to place some of these people in some of these spots. For example, I thought I found the perfect place for one of our clients. I was super excited. Started doing all my due diligence. Oh, look, there's a gym down the way, and for crying in the mud, wouldn't you just know it, there's a daycare in this gym. And so therefore, because there's a daycare, and it was like 25 feet difference. And I was like,
I didn't even
Dang
think
it all
about
to
the
heck. Anyway.
daycare. I knew about the school.
schools, daycares,
Yes.
churches, it all depends on the municipality. However, but for the
Wow.
most part, like residential, so you have to do all these measuring, all these calculations to figure out whether or not even is it zoned, but is it proper distance from certain different entities. So when I start looking for some of these wonderful people that I've met through MITA and had the opportunity to try and help, it's just super, super difficult. I mean, I like to say
Right.
that my auto users are difficult. Marijuana is dang near impossible, which going back to the whole social equity thing
Right.
and being fair, it's not quite right. I
Right.
mean,
Again, reality, Julia, she's got it. You've got reality. I don't care about reality.
Right.
I care about what could be.
Well, if we
And
could write,
and what is-
I call them blue sky contracts. If you could write anything in the blue sky I want,
No,
that's where
here's
Demitri
the
comes
thing.
in.
Not just in cannabis, but probably all laws, all rules, all regulations, they have origins. They came from somewhere. It's a complicated web that we've woven over the last thousands and thousands of years.
Mhm.
This industry was created out of thin air. The cartels aren't in it anymore. Those guys in college, they're not in it anymore. Some of the growers have been trying to get into it. We create an industry out of thin air, but there's nothing right or wrong about it. It's just a matter of perception. And all those rules and regulations, they're written and drafted by policymakers at the city, the county, the state, and soon to be the federal government. And I would urge people to think to themselves, well, am I going to support somebody that understands opportunity, that understands economics, that understands the free market for public office, and interview them and ask them what they know about cannabis policy, cannabis structure. And you can use that as a model to just kind of understand their philosophical leanings in general. But it's so important that the citizens and the individuals out there get to those who make the decisions and say, you know what, I'd like to be able to sell more real estate. I'd like to be able to sell more plumbing, more electrical, more accounting, more legal. And we need a little bit more of a robust market. And one day it would be nice to see that cannabis become the fifth C of Arizona.
One of the C's.
If we act now, we can prepare our state to have more manufacturing, more cultivation, so that we can export great products like the ones Ari wants to produce across the country. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if Anheuser-Busch, for example, or Pfizer, or what's an innocuous, Doritos,
Right.
or is that Frito-Lay? Frito-Lay. Wouldn't
Frito-Lay.
it be nice if they
Pepsi.
were all headquartered here in Phoenix?
Wouldn't that be awesome?
We can make that happen if we can have intelligent discussions.
But the question that would come up, that would be literally the $1 million question, would be water, right? For our state in particular. And so if, say, let's say our blue sky is out there, and let's say we are the country's leading state for cultivation, for all the things, how would we address our water issues?
Well, I mean, we have agricultural crops being grown in water. What I would say is let's give the farmers the choice as to whether they produce a crop of cantaloupe watermelon that they can sell for $5, $10 a pound, or some sort of cannabis related crop that they can sell. Right now, it's thousands of dollars a pound. Wholesale is somewhere between $500 and $1,500, depending on the type
the
of
product is.
the product. Yeah. So, but wouldn't you rather be a farmer with the choice as to how to use the water And then we can buy from our lettuce from California or New Mexico, where nobody wants to cultivate because they have restricted plant counts.
But Demitri, what happens if there's no water left?
So that's actually what's happening now, guys. And I'd like to point out that we are in a huge drought situation.
Yeah.
And our neighbors to the north in Las Vegas, they are not allowing any homes to grow grass any longer. It's completely prohibited.
Lake Mead is at like such
all-time low.
It's very scary, and there's going to be a drought in California.
So what they're starting
to
talk about now is that they're starting to talk about limiting agricultural water.
Right.
And that's the first thing that's going to go. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I think we should talk about the golf courses here in Arizona. But
and watering our lawns.
Yeah, right. For sure.
And swimming pools.
I agree.
It's like there's so much excess water that we're using.
Governor Ducey wants to spend $1 billion bringing water up from Rocky Point. That's a great plan. It's a nice plan. Desalination is not a bad route. We'll build a big pipeline up from down there in Rocky Point. Great idea. We could figure out how we could get cannabis to pay for it. Actually, I've already structured in my mind exactly how cannabis could pay for that $1 billion pipeline.
What would that look like?
I'm not going to share it unless Carrie Lake or Katie Hobbs calls me directly.
Well, Katie Hobbs is on our list of people to have on the show. So when she comes, maybe we'll invite you.
Yeah, no, I have it all structured in my mind because I grew up in a world where, Dune was everything. Dune, he who controls the spice controls the universe. And it's a constant battle of needs and wants and greeds and personnel to control the spice. Remember at the end, it's the spice. After Muad'Dib abused the spice, he managed to get the spice to bring water to Arrakis, the desert planet. There's a way, and that's where it came to me. And when Ducey talked about his $1 billion pipeline, I'm like, I think I know how to make that happen.
Right?
I could do this and adjust this and just change this, such as this. We can make that happen.
Well, and how is he going to do that when he's out of office?
Well,
next
but
year?
so he's gone.
Right. Why even create a plan when you can't execute it?
But he wasn't even thinking enough to legalize it. When there were some smart Republican business legislators who were like, spoke up publicly, Ethan Orr, Jeff Dial, some of these guys were like, well, we should legalize it because this is what the voters, it makes sense. Prohibition doesn't work as a management tool. And I always say, if you hold the thought on the spice water Dune thing, but if you hate cannabis, if you think it sucks, tax, regulate, educate, eradicate. If you love cannabis, if you think it's a therapeutic medicine that's going to help you in some capacity, and I know that it does. I don't use it myself, but I've seen it work very effectively. Tax, regulate, educate, participate. In no reality does prohibition exist. A lot of intelligent business Republicans got that in 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. But they couldn't speak up because they would say to me all the time, Demitri, it doesn't help me in my primaries because my old fuddy-duddies, my old moralists think that cannabis is inherently evil. I'm like, well, just tell them, tax, regulate, educate, eradicate. They can teach people that it sucks. But don't let those people that know that it works for them as a therapeutic medicine
it's not
that's
only
better than NyQuil, that's better than Adderall, let them participate. But they didn't.
Right.
They didn't because they didn't have the courage to do it in their primaries. And poor Ethan Orr, back in 2013, 14, he's now like the VP of U of A something. He actually came out and said, it makes sense. And then the Republican base came after him and saying he's crazy. He wants to legalize marijuana. No, he's smart.
Marijuana
and look where we are today, 7 years later. He was right. I'll go back to the Dune thing later. Sorry, Giulia.
I was just going to comment that, you keep talking about it as, therapeutic value, which obviously that's known fact,
too,
right?
yes.
But I believe in both the social and the medical use of cannabis. I don't think there's anything wrong with using it socially either.
And by socially, you mean what we are used to, like as recreationally,
correct?
Right? It's no different than if you are drinking a beer or having a glass of wine. It's the same type of participation.
Except for it doesn't have calories and it doesn't kill your brain cells.
Right,
so.
and it doesn't give you a hangover in the morning. Yes.
Yeah. Alcohol is toxic. We all know that. But it's like the common, regular, everyday people, talk about it. They're doing it on morning shows. They're drinking, everything. So to me, cannabis should be normalized in that sense. I mean, it's no.
Yeah. And we it's just philosophical difference.
Yeah.
I cannot believe what alcohol has gotten away with. The concept of recreational alcohol to me is absolutely insane. Of using any substance that you can become dependent on recreationally is absolutely insane. It should be used responsibly and therapeutically, and people should have a right to choose their substance, their whatever it is. If I want to drink coffee in the morning to pick me up, Actually, I did drink a cup of coffee. That's why I'm probably so upset right now. But I drink coffee as a drug.
Right, exactly.
And, I do. I use coffee therapeutically. I mean, to do recreational coffee, that's insane
Right.
too.
I can tell you I am dependent on coffee.
Yes.
Like if there was a 12-step program for my coffee use, I would have to join it
Right.
because if you took it away, there would be a problem.
So we shouldn't have a coffee store in every corner?
I'm just saying, I don't feel like we have enough coffee stores.
Yeah.
But
Well,
that's the
and I mean,
Seattleite in me. I
Maybe
can't
that's
help
what's
it.
causing your dependency.
I am also,
Well, that we can talk about
yes.
that after.
Yes.
Yeah.
So-
But I think I voted way back in the day to legalize marijuana because my idea is that there's so many different regulations and that would go away, right? I mean, the war on drugs,
Right.
has diminished greatly because, as Demitri said, the cartels are no longer involved. So I think there's so many different layers to legalization of marijuana that has helped our society and helped with some of the issues that we've been battling for so long and spending so much money on. I mean, the whole war on drugs is just nutty to think about. Whereas if you can regulate it and tax it and then use those funds for recovery or for education, for
Right.
all those things, I think you're in a much better position as a society.
Well, and that's what Oregon's trying to do with some of their legalization or not legalization. They are taking away the fines and the fees and things like that for
decriminalization.
Yeah, thank you. For some of the heavier hitting drugs. And that's literally what it's for. It's so that they can actually treat people who are dependent on them on the streets and whatever. Because we all know Oregon has a very high homeless population issue that's largely related to drug use. So it's like, not that marijuana is in that category at all, but it would have the same effect where you're taking it out of the cartel hands or the drug pusher hands and just kind of giving back the ability to be able to help save people from it. But they have been seen as such a like crazy leftist like process because of that. And it's like, but if you think about it pragmatically, sometimes that makes a lot of sense. And sometimes someone just has to do it to then go through the process to see if that makes sense for people.
I think the next thing that's going to be coming online is psilocybin. That's kind of
Isn't that mushrooms?
That's a
Yes.
whole nother
Yeah.
hour.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Have you talked to Joe Rogan? I think he's a fan.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, I've studied it for a while as well. I believe in, sort of natural remedies, if you will, over, the pharmaceutical drugs that are prescribed
Well,
by
there's
doctors.
no profit in that though. So that's where the biggest problem comes in.
Right. And that is, and that's the frustration. Why can't we study these natural products and do clinical trials and really understand the efficacy of these products rather than, the pharma drugs that got through on clinical trials, but those were designed by pharma companies and they kept doing them until they passed, until they got the results that they wanted. And it was just a business. That's all, and why can't we do the same thing? Like, why aren't we allowed to do that? So
Why do you think?
100%. I don't know about the why you think, but I was going to say I'm with Giulia on the medicinal benefits, especially trying to get people off of pharmaceuticals and onto cannabis, or especially with like the whole COVID. I agree with you using it for like the social benefit also, because during the whole COVID epidemic, everybody's been staying at home, not trying to get out with people or getting depressed, not being able to eat, not being able to sleep, all these different medical problems that people created because of this whole COVID isolation. And now like people are being able to go out and smoke with their friends or go and learn and do activities, but still use cannabis to try to mellow them out and not be so anxious.
I think that, because liquid courage, right, comes from alcohol.
Yeah.
Why couldn't you have the exact same mellowing effect to hang out with your people, which goes back to Dimitri's point of educate.
I have been studying substance abuse 10 years now, and we have a little subtle disagreement here, but we all agree on liberty and choice.
Right.
We all agree on liberty and choice. But, the goal is to not be dependent on anything.
Right.
The goal is to figure out what the problem. So what she referred to, those issues, they were caused by a COVID pandemic shutdown. So people that needed to drink, they needed to play golf, they needed to use marijuana. So solve the program, solve the problem, open up the society, open up the community so people have choice. If you have trouble sleeping at night, don't say I'm going to use NyQuil, Jack Daniels, or anything
Those are
to
socially
sleep.
acceptable.
Figure out
Or
why you're
Ambien.
figure out why you're not sleeping at night.
Right.
Ask yourself questions.
Your
Do some
stress
reflection.
load, your anxiety,
yeah. And
your environment.
right, and I do a lot of yoga. I do it every day, and fortunately, because I do a lot of yoga, I spend a lot of time reflecting, a lot of time understanding this stuff. And the goal is to lead a substance-free life. You have to drink a cup of coffee every day to pick yourself up to do this show. Why? Why don't you just wake up that way? Is there any adjustment that you could do in your life to prepare yourself so in the morning you feel like you just drank a cup of coffee?
I think I offered to sell my kids in the last show, so maybe that's a conversation.
But it's like, why would you, it's like some people want to live the life of a monk and be, completely free of all substances and eat a certain way.
I
and,
came down off my mountain.
And it's just, to me, I don't know. Like, I want to have fun too, like, I mean,
fun.
I like anandamide. I like feeling joy and bliss. And
it was lonely on the mountaintop. I came down.
You can create those same experiences through meditation, through physical activity. There's many different ways. And it's kind of, what do you feel like in that moment?
Mm-hmm.
And what are you going to get out of it in that moment?
And I think you can have both mindsets exist in the same space, right? You can figure out what the root cause of that problem is through meditation, through whatever of your environment and all the things, but then know that I'm adding this in for this effect, whatever that is.
If they try to do prohibition for coffee, I will protect you.
Thanks.
I will defend
appreciate
you.
that. I'm going to need it.
I will stop
Nobody wants
them.
to see that.
Okay. We can all agree that the government has no role in the role
Mm-hmm.
in the personal lives and personal decisions of Ari, of Giulia, of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, we need to keep them as far away from us as possible because they know nothing about what she needs or what she needs. That's so we can all agree on that.
But that comes back to educate. And the only way we are going to do that is by continuing to have these conversations, by continuing to have the ability to put these different items into practice and, by clinical trials or anything like that. So I wouldn't be a willing participant in signing up for what happens to people when you take coffee away, but I'm sure somebody might.
Yep,
Right.
100%. I also don't want to say it's like 100% like a substance abuse either, because some
Correct.
people do necessarily need it.
Mhm.
For example, like people who are trying to treat anxiety or depression, stuff like that. I mean, you could do yoga and a whole bunch of therapy, but
It may
that
not
costs
help.
thousands of
A
dollars.
a
Yeah.
chemical imbalance.
Yeah, exactly. It is literally a chemical imbalance. You're not producing enough dopamine or serotonin or whatever. Your body physically cannot do that. You know what I
So,
mean?
I'll tell you, when I used to live in Portland, Oregon, and Seattle. When I lived in Portland, I was an adult. I had already lived here. We had a moment of weakness in a hot summer, and we moved back to Portland, and we lived there for about 3 years. I suffered seasonal depression worse than any postpartum I've dealt with, anything in my life.
Mhm.
And that was really hard as even a very strong individual to pull myself out of. And if there are people that live like that in their headspace every day, I 100% believe that they need whatever they need to work through that. And that is probably
Yeah.
an imbalance of some kind.
Whether
Right,
it's Prozac or Zoloft or
Right.
cannabis or Xanax or Adderall or whatever
Right.
people are taking, because they're going to their doctors and asking for
Correct.
these things,
Hi, my name is Demitri Downing, and I'm a recovering yoga addict. We're supposed to all say we love you, Demitri.
Welcome, Demitri.
Welcome, Demitri.
I also believe, too, like besides like anxiety and depression, people have things out there like epilepsy,
Yeah.
for instance, or like
Schizophrenia.
schizophrenia, seizures, stuff like that. So when they go and they have to go to the hospital and request these things, if they don't have insurance, those things are $100, $125,
Right.
$300 per 12 pills, and they can't stop having these kind of like
Right.
seizures or reactions. And then, like for instance, if I'm like the mother of that child, I have to watch my child go through that. So now I have anxiety, depression, PTSD,
Right.
or whatever,
And
because
that-
I can't treat my
That's
child.
back to the root causes of what's creating that anxiety or
Yeah,
triggering
and
that.
that's more medicinal. That has to be.
Correct.
But if she had her ideal world, her child wouldn't have to have anything wrong with it. But if there's a problem that you can solve yourself by reflecting and analyzing it and coming to understand yourself better, wouldn't you wish that reality upon yourself or anyone that you love?
I
that
like
perspective?
I like your big picture thinking, and we have to wrap up. So, maybe another time we can invite everybody back again
Yep.
and talk about it again. But I want everybody to know how they can contact you. And so please tell the listeners your contact information, your Instagram, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. So if I may make a big picture statement here, if you want to wax philosophically and talk about things that don't exist, contact me, come to MITA.
Right.
If you want to get into the nuances about how the industry really works, contact Giulia and come to MITA. If you want to meet somebody who's going to be a future cannabis entrepreneur and dominate this space, contact Ari. She'll also be at MITA.
Ari, what's your Instagram?
My Instagram is Smoke Ari with 2 eyes.
Okay. All right. And then Julia, what is yours?
I'm more of an observer on social media, not so much a participator.
Well, you can observe me at
You can find her on LinkedIn.
There you go.
I'll be on LinkedIn, yes.
Yes, at Investment Real Estate AZ. Thank you, everybody, so much for coming. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Smashing Through Walls, a place for robust conversations about the building and blocks of Arizona commercial and real estate investments. Host Carla McGee is a commercial real estate broker with MHG Commercial, powered by My Home Group. The opinions expressed here are not necessarily the opinions of My Home Group and do not constitute any offer or advertisement of business or services. The real estate market is cyclical, and listeners assume all responsibility should any return on investment, tax consequences, credit effects, or financing terms not meet their expectations. Guests may not be qualified to provide financial, legal, or tax advice regarding a real estate transaction. Listeners are advised to obtain professional tax and legal advice and counsel.